Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today's topic is going to be just how the New York Jets have gone 9 straight years without making the playoffs. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you aren't already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more Jets content. In the NFL, there's a ton of parity. New teams make the playoffs all the time, yet the New York Jets have the third longest active streak without making the playoffs. Only the Browns and Tampa Bay Buccaneers have gone longer without making the playoffs. The New York Jets have the third longest streak, the last time they made it since 2010. So what happened since then? We're going to start in 2011, go to 2019, and then talk about some of the things that have continued to happen year over year over year and why they continually do not make the playoffs. In 2011, the Jets were coming off back-to-back AFC Championship games, and they tried to get cute. They tried to sign Nnamdi Asomugha. That failed. He went to the dream team of the Philadelphia Eagles. That went down the tubes. Their season went bad in 2011, but so did the Jets. They missed out on Asomugha. They let guys like Jericho Cotchery and Braylon Edwards go, and they brought in guys like Plaxico Burress, woof, Derek Mason, even worse, in order to replace those guys, and Mark Sanchez struggled because of it. He started off rather hot, but the last few games of the year, he really struggled, especially down the stretch. The Jets were 8-5 and in pretty good position, and then they lost the last 3 games to the Eagles, the Giants, and the Dolphins to go to 8-8 and miss out on the playoffs on what was another opportunity to make it with that core group of guys. In 2012, we saw a Mark Sanchez regression. He was terrible, and a big reason for that was the offensive line and his lack of playmakers. Your top 3 receivers were Chaz Schilens, Jeremy Curley, and Stephen Hill. They went 6-10. Are you surprised when that is your receiving core? Yes, Mark Sanchez stunk, but so did the Jets' offense around him. They did him no favors. He regressed. They go 6-10. Rex Ryan stays. John Idzik comes in to replace Mike Tannenbaum, and away we go in 2013. As the New York Jets would draft Geno Smith, Rex Ryan would play Mark Sanchez, who was outplaying Geno Smith in the preseason. In the fourth quarter of the Giants' preseason game, Mark Sanchez gets hurt, done for the year, ending his New York Jets career. In comes Geno Smith. The Jets overachieve, go 8-8, and then they give Rex Ryan a Gatorade bath at the end of the year. They decide to keep Rex Ryan and John Idzik for another year and try to do this, I guess, the right way in their mind. By the way, that receiving core was also atrocious. Jeremy Curley, a washed Santonio Holmes, and David Nelson were your top 3 receivers. In 2014, the Jets added Eric Decker into the mix. Pretty solid wide receiver. They would also add Chris Johnson, who was completely toasted by that point. We saw a Geno Smith regression. He got benched for a decrepit Michael Vick. Michael Vick looked okay at points. I remember him beating the Pittsburgh Steelers somehow. Nonetheless, it was a pretty much wasted season on a really bad team. And I mean, that defense stunk. They had one of the worst secondaries ever assembled. Jets go 4-12. Idzik and Rex both kiss goodbye after 2014. John Idzik gets the boot after 2 years. Rex Ryan, who probably should have got the boot after 2012, sticks around for 2 more years, and the Jets are going to rebuild, this time with Mike Maccagnan and new head coach Todd Bowles. Maccagnan tries to do the aggressive rebuild. He brings back Darrelle Revis, he brings back Antonio Cromartie, and he trades for Brandon Marshall. Now, in 2015, that worked. They started off really strong, got to 5-5 after a slow part of the schedule in the middle of the year, and then went on a run, won 5 games in a row, went to 10-5. Everything was clicking. I mean, Chris Ivory was having a good year, Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Should also mention that Geno Smith didn't start this year because he got knocked out by Ike Enemkpali, broke his jaw. Ryan Fitzpatrick starts. He plays a majority of the games. I think he only got hurt in the Raiders game briefly, and Geno Smith came in. Nonetheless, he was the starting quarterback. Week 17, they go on the road to Buffalo. Win and you're in against Rex Ryan. They lay an egg. They only gave the ball to Chris Ivory 6 times on a windy day in Buffalo. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 3 interceptions. There was a drop touchdown pass by Kembrell Thompson that would have still won the game and sent them to the playoffs. They would have probably beat the Bengals in the first round because the Bengals stink. And then they would have went up against the Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning and his noodle arm. Could they have beaten him? I don't know, but nonetheless, they missed out on their opportunity. And then in 2016, they tried to double down on that. The Ryan Fitzpatrick offseason saga, they finally bring him back. Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker's still around. Antonio Cromartie's gone, but Darrelle Revis is back. They're doubling down on that, and it absolutely blew up in their face. They get off to a 1-5 start. They end up finishing 5-11. They go back to Geno Smith briefly. They even played Bryce Petty towards the end. It was a disaster of a season that ended at 5-11. In 2017, we saw the full tank mode, or so that they tried to broadcast. Out were the likes of Nick Mangold, David Harris, Revis, all the guys that we were familiar with making a ton of money. They were gone, and they brought in Josh McCown, who actually played above his head and got the Jets to a 5-11 record, which then caused them to have to trade up to get Sam Darnold in the 2018 draft class. In 2018, we saw Sam Darnold's rookie year. He got hurt, missed some time in the middle. They started off pretty good, and then Todd Bowles does Todd Bowles-like things. They lose 9 of their last 10 games. They go 4-12. Really disgusting season. Bowles is out. They decide to bring in Adam Gase, an awful decision. They should have fired both Maccagnan and Bowles at the same time. Instead, they keep Maccagnan, then hire Adam Gase, which was probably the worst decision they could have made. Out of every single coaching candidate, I liked Adam Gase the least, and he has done brutally bad in 2019, which we're about to get to. And then they decide, let's let Mike Maccagnan spend $100 million in free agency. Let's let him have another draft, something that he's terrible at, and then we'll fire him. Crazy town. 2019, Darnold gets mono. Adam Gase just cannot coach a football team, and they have a million injuries. The Jets are sitting at 5-8 right now, and they are eliminated from the playoffs for the 9th year in a row. 9 years, no playoffs. It's embarrassing times to be a New York Jets fan. And the crazy part is, it wasn't always like that. For most of my young life, the Jets were good. From 1997 to 2010, they made the playoffs a bunch. They never went 3 years in a row with missing the playoffs. They went to 3 AFC title games. They went to the playoffs in 98, 01, 02, 04, 06, almost 08, 9, 10. That's pretty good. That is a pretty solid stretch run for the New York Jets over that time span. They were pretty good during my childhood. And then it went all downhill. They were brutal this decade of the 2010s outside the championship game in the first year. They missed the playoffs a bunch, and they were over 500 one time. They finished over 500 once during this stretch. Embarrassing. Yes, I know in 2010 they went 11-5, but I'm talking about the stretch where they missed the playoffs. Over the last 9 years, they finished 10-6 in 2015. And finished 8-8 a couple of times, and then all losing seasons after that. Some of the reason for this is poor drafting. That is huge. In the past 9 years, the Jets have drafted 5 interior defensive linemen in the first round. 5. Muhammad Wilkerson, Quentin Coples, Sheldon Richardson, Leonard Williams, Quinnen Williams. They haven't made the playoffs over that span. I wonder why. It all breaks down to positional value, something else that I want to talk about. The Jets have zero understanding of positional value, especially when it comes to the draft. For instance, taking Jamal Adams, who is a very good safety, a top 3 safety in the league, maybe top 1 safety in the NFL, over Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. The Jets did not have a good quarterback situation going into 2017. They were relying on Hackenberg and Petty, who are out of the NFL at this point, in order to take a next step forward. They could have had one of those 2 guys, decided to go safety instead and prolong this process of finding a quarterback. Yes, I am all in on Sam Darnold now, but this issue could have been fixed a year in advance. Drafting Quinnen Williams, an interior defensive lineman, your 5th in the last 9 years in the first round, instead of Josh Allen. The Jets have not had an edge rusher since John Abraham. He has not played on this team in going on 15 years. Why you continue to draft the same position and always it just blows up in your face, I don't understand it. It also doesn't help that you had major whiffs on guys like Quentin Coples, Dean Milner, Calvin Pryor, Darren Lee, all not enough impact on the New York Jets in the first round. Just simply not enough. You also got nothing out of mid-round draft picks. Christian Hackenberg as a second-round pick was one of the worst picks in NFL history. He did not take a regular season snap as a second-round pick at the quarterback position. Embarrassing. You also drafted guys like Stephen Hill, Devin Smith in the second round, Vlad Dukas. These guys have done nothing in the NFL. In 2017, 2 mid-round picks on wide receivers are Darius Stewart and Chad Hansen, out of the league. Eli McGuire, out of the league. Trenton Cannon would be out of the league if he wasn't injured. And they completely ignored the offensive line through the draft. Over this time, they have taken 8 offensive linemen, none earlier than the 3rd round. Offensive line is a premium position in the NFL. You need to have a good offensive line, quarterback, edge rush, corner. Those are your 4 most important positions in today's NFL. And the Jets ignored or did not have a good situation at any of those positions over that time. Let's think about it. Pretty much after Revis left, the cornerback situation's been pretty bad since about 2014, outside of a few good weeks in 2015. The edge rush has been non-existent for the last 10, 15 years. Quarterback position, I think, is fixed now, but has been bad for a long time, and offensive line has been inconsistent for a very, 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 very long time because you ignored it in the draft for a decade. And most importantly, why the Jets have missed the playoffs this long? Bad ownership. I have talked about bad coaches in Adam Gase, Todd Bowles, Rex Ryan at the end. I've talked about bad general managers, John Idzik, Mike Maccagnan. We don't know about Joe Douglas yet. And the most important piece that I haven't mentioned yet is ownership. They allowed this to happen. Woody Johnson, Christopher Johnson, both bad owners. They're not good. And it all starts from the top. That is how you missed the playoffs for 9 years in a row. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Get at me in the comments or on social media. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll talk to you guys next time.